Everybody, what's going on, man? It's your boy Architect Nice in the building. We are back in the setting, man. That is a lot that I missed while I was gone. Now, I know I missed a lot in sports with Russell Westbrook breaking the all-time triple-double record. Lakers on a 3-game winning streak. Celtics is on a 4-game losing streak. Trailblazers and Dallas is at the 5th and 6th seed right now, and the Lakers are still fighting to get out of the play-in. And the NFL schedule came out as well. But I'm not even going to start with that, man. I actually want to start off with one of my favorite podcasts. The Joe Budden podcast, man. Dad, you know what? I honestly can't believe it, but I can believe it at the same time. And I'm gonna be honest with a lot of y'all, man. I've listened to the episode to the episode 437. I've listened to it about twice, and I gotta be honest with y'all, man. I'm siding with Joe Budden on this one, believe it or not. And I've seen that a lot of people are siding with Rory and Maul, but I don't think a lot of people are really putting in perspective to what Joe Budden was saying and to what's been happening throughout the duration of that podcast. Now, my reaction to a lot of what's been said. So Joe Budden talked about the reason why he actually fired Rory and Maul, what's been going on behind the scenes and what those two have been doing behind Joe Budden's back. Now, I want to start off with Maul. And I know that a lot of people love Rory and Maul, right? And I'm first going to speak about Maul here. Now, I think Joe was fair in saying that those two were overpaid. And I got to be honest with you, I absolutely agree with that statement, honestly. I started watching the Joe Budden podcast around episode 97, 98. And at that time, Rory and Maul was already there. And I think Ice was on one of those episodes too. 97, 98, one of those, right? So, me going back and looking at a lot of the episodes and a lot of the episodes prior to years and beyond, where they've been podcasting for 5 years now. And I'm going to start off with Maul. I honestly believe that not only has Maul been overpaid, a lot of times he underperformed. And not only underperformed, but he is always just underprepared. He's really unprepared, and a lot of times he's uninspired to be there. With that podcast being a music podcast, he doesn't really engage in when they're talking about music, when they're speaking about anything that's going on in the world. A lot of times he doesn't know what's going on. I'm hearing Joe and Rory saying that he's always late and he's always on his phone. But then on the episode when Rory and Maul came back after being off for a month and a week, he talks about respect. And I gotta ask this too, right? If you are gonna talk about respect, then how disrespectful is it that you are always late, you are a lot of times uninspired to be there, and you're always on your phone when y'all are supposed to be podcasting? And a lot of times when I'm reading under the comments under y'all episodes, a lot of comments would be about Maul and how there would be 10 to 15 minute spurts of Maul not saying anything. And not when Joe is going on a rant about something. It's when Rory, Joe, and Parks are speaking about music or speaking about what's happening, and Maul is just honestly not gauging in their conversation. And they're supposed to be podcasting together. They're supposed to be doing this together. And for them to talk about having equal rights to the podcast, about equality, about ownership, I gotta say this too. Out of those three, I think Maul has a lot to offer outside of the podcast. When he can do anything about fashion, right? Because let's be honest, I haven't seen Maul wear the same thing twice the entire 5 years that he's been on that podcast. He's never worn the same thing twice. He can even speak about sports. I heard Joe say today, or during the episode, on how Joe was trying to inspire him to have his own show. And we haven't seen that happen. Right? So it's like, what are you doing outside of the podcast to make yourself some money? Cause outside of the Joe Budden podcast, Joe does his pull-ups. Joe has the Revolt show that he did. And I know that Joe is taking all the calls. He's doing all the contract negotiations. And the only thing you two have to do is go in there 2 times a week and podcast. So y'all are only speaking for probably 30 hours a month, where there's a ton of people out here in this world who have to work 40 hours a week, 50, even 60 hours a week just to make a living. And we are listening to y'all complain about equality, complaining about ownership, when the only thing y'all two have to do is talk. Talk about what's going on in the world. The least you can do is help research, listen to music on your off days, because you guys are off 5 days a week when people work 5 days a week. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of people in this world who work 7 days a week. And so I honestly don't get how you can come on the show and the one thing you do is complain about there's no respect in the room. And 2, you complain about what Joe told you about that the podcast is none of your business. When in reality, if you really think about it, I have to agree. Because Joe is the only person on the podcast who's been there since day one. Rory was there starting on episode 9. You started on episode 77. So anything dealing with the podcast, yeah, Joe has to handle that. On top of the how many people he has on his payroll. On top of the 2 podcasts that he's paying for with the ladies. And the fact that Maul and Rory are probably the top 2 paid guys that works under Joe. Because, yeah, I got to say that. They work under Joe. And as much years of friendship that you guys have with each other, at the end of the day, it's a business. And honestly, those are business decisions that have to be made. Because, look, I'm just a listener, right? I'm not in y'all business. I don't know what goes on behind the scenes, but a lot of us get a good gauge at what may be happening, because there's been a few episodes where I can feel the tension. I can feel what's happening and what's going on, that we can kind of get a good gauge of where y'all not happy of what's going on. But I gotta say, I'm sure y'all have a lot of money. I'm sure y'all made a bunch of money together. And the fact that y'all complain about what's going on in the Joe Budden podcast when the only thing y'all got to do is pod 2 times a week, it's pretty insane to me, honestly, if you ask me. And as for Rory, I would say this, though. There's been a lot of episodes, I think at one point, probably 3-4 months straight, where Rory has been the star of the show. Where, it was a week where Rory wasn't there, a day where Rory wasn't there, and the show just felt different. Just because Rory has damn near the same humor that Joe Budden has. But I will say this also. Outside of the shows that you would put on before the pandemic, Joe spoke about the opportunities that he gave you and he presented to you, and we don't hear about it. Honestly, we didn't hear about it. So my thing is this. How come both of y'all didn't take the initiative to do a show on your own? You guys don't have your own YouTube channel to do a show on, because honestly, y'all can easily get sponsors the day you start. With Maul, he can get a shoe deal. He can get a clothes deal. He can have some type of sponsor. Because y'all was working with Joe Budden, I'm sure he could have gave y'all a bunch of opportunities to do something on your own. And the fact that y'all didn't do any initiative to do that, it says a lot. To me, it says that y'all have been riding Joe Budden's coattails, and y'all are wanting ownership of the Joe Budden network instead of venturing off and doing something one time a week on your own time, making your own money. And you could have still been doing the podcast on top of doing your own show. And it's kind of crazy. It's crazy to me because honestly, I would have loved to be in the position that y'all in. Do research hours a day to find something to talk about. And then y'all have pre-production. So y'all are definitely coming up with ideas before the show. And honestly, I would love to do something like that. I'm sure y'all were probably making 6 figures or on your way to making 6 figures. There are a bunch of YouTubers, including me, out there that's trying to get paid. That's trying to create a business for ourselves. And the fact that y'all two had the opportunity to do that on your own time, it says a lot. It says a whole lot of what's been going on. And the fact that y'all were kind of upset that he was thinking about doing business with DJ Academics, a dude that he had a show on Complex with for a year. It's like, why be mad about that? As much as Joe has been working with getting deals on top of deals on top of deals, like Joe has been putting in work for y'all, it seems like. And even like y'all, like with Joe Budden, the podcast being independent, and y'all still was getting paid what y'all are making. And he said y'all got raises even when the Joe Budden podcast didn't have a deal. Like that's absolutely insane to me that the Joe Budden podcast is independent and y'all are still getting paid as if y'all had deals still. Look, Park seems happy. Everybody else on the podcast seems happy what they're getting paid. But it seems like the 2 highest paid people on the payroll are the ones that are upset and the ones that felt like they are getting robbed. It doesn't make sense to me, honestly. Just me looking at everything, it doesn't make sense to me. Look, I would love to have to be in that position, honestly. Because look, I would definitely take the money that Joe Budden has been given and go out and create something on my own. You have enough money to pay lawyers, have enough money to pay for a video crew, for a camera, to have people edit your videos. I'm sure they make enough money to do that. But because y'all didn't want to do that, y'all want to take something away from Joe because y'all didn't want to do something on your own, it's selfish. So I have to agree with what Joe Budden did in terms of firing y'all. Now, he maybe should not have done it on the show, but to be honest, it probably had to be done. Y'all probably haven't really talked about ownership, but the fact that y'all try to put Joe under the fire, it's absolutely crazy to me. I mean, look, I've watched the show. Well, I've listened to the show twice on the way back home. And that show was damn near 3 hours, and I listened to it twice. And I wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything. But those were just the main points that I got from it. So I don't know what's going to happen. I don't think Maul and Rory is ever coming back, because he did say whenever they get the energy right, then they are allowed to come back. But I don't know any jobs that will allow you to miss a whole month and then let you come back on the show and still get paid what you're getting paid. And then on top of having a podcast on Patreon where people have to pay $10 for people to listen to, and y'all fuck that up too? I'm sorry. As much history as Joe Budden has, or the stigma that people put on Joe, I'm not blaming Joe for this one. I gotta side with Joe in this one. I'm sorry, but it seems, I won't say that it's an easy job, but it's a lot easier than what other people have. Y'all make a lot more money than what other podcasters make. And I just think y'all blew a really good chance in expanding yourselves out there. Honestly. It just doesn't make sense to me, but that's just my 2 cents on it, man. I hope that there are still friends outside of this, but honestly, it may not be, because from what I'm understanding, there's a real big possibility that lawyers are going to be involved, people are going to be sued, and it's going to be a dangerous situation that I'm sure it's going to be hard to come back from, especially as friends. It's going to be real hard to come back from. So, I don't know. But I hope Joe keeps this show running, because honestly, Ice and Ish did a wonderful job when those two were gone. And honestly, there were a ton of people saying, look, Ice and Ish need to stay on the show. And they got real comfortable and they looked really good doing it, because they had no industry ties to anybody. So they were willingly say whatever, and that made the podcast that much greater, because they didn't really give a fuck about the industry. They didn't really care. So I think Ice and Ish need to be on the show permanently, and I think the podcast will go on with or without Maul and Rory. So as much as I love them two on the show, and as much chemistry as y'all three had, or four had, I'm sure Ice and Ish would do a good job doing the show. I'm quite sure of it. But that's just my 2 cents on it, man. Let me know in the comments what y'all think, man. Thank y'all for watching. Hey, make sure you guys like, subscribe, and comment. And y'all look out for the travel vlog. This is actually gonna be my first travel vlog that I'm doing, and hope that many more vlogs come in the future. I have plenty ideas, but I'm sure y'all will see that in the future, man. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, and comment. Architect Nice out.